In this video, I'm going to walk you through the if, and or functions. We're going to do so in an example where we're modeling cash flows over a number of years. In this case, we're going to have 100 cash flows, and we want them to start in year 3. So first, I'm going to go ahead and build my years out here. Let's just go out 10 years. Go down to about 10 years. Need one more. All right, we have 10 years, and here I'm going to model my cash flows. All right, so our first thing we want to do is just use the if function, and let's introduce that. So if, as soon as we type the function, you can see the requirements here. So the first requirement is a logical test. So this is going to be something like, is the year greater than or equal to our start year parameter? So in this case, we can set it up. We can go to our year and type greater than or equal to, scroll up to our start year. Importantly, we want to lock that start year with both row and column locked. And now that's our logical test. So if that's true, then it'll give the value if true. Right? This is our second input into the function, is the value. So we can just say true. And the third input then is the value if false, and we can type false. So let's see how this looks. If we copy that, Control-Shift-End and Control-V, now we see that it's false in years 1 and 2. In years 3 forward, it is true. All right, that makes sense because once we get to year 3, 3 is greater than or equal to 3. That looks okay. A lot of times we don't want to see true or false though, so we can come in here and maybe change that. Let's show, for example, we can show a 1 if it's true and a 0 if it's false. We copy that down, we see the zeros and then the 1s. However, that's not exactly what we want in this model. In this model, we want to get our cash flows. So here, let's go back in, F2, and we're going to change this 1 to cell D3. So D3 is where our cash flow is. Let's hit enter, copy this down, and we see some things that don't really make sense. All right, whenever you see this, just go to one of those cells that doesn't make sense and let's see what happened. So in this case, I'm saying if the year C12, 5, is greater than or equal to D4, 3, so that's true, then give me D7. D7 is the cell that says cash flows. That's not what I want, right? I forgot to lock my cell reference on cash flows. So let's go back to the top, go back into that cell, scroll over to it, F4 to lock, enter, copy and paste down. Now we see that our formula is working. Whenever we're in year 3 or greater, we have a $100 cash flow. Now if we want to go back to our start year, we could change that to say 5. And now we see cash flows starting in year 5. We change that to 9. We only see cash flows in year 9 and 10. Right, so that's how the formula is working for us. So now let's actually add a little bit of complexity. And we're going to put an end year on as well. So we'll put our start year back to 3. Let's make our end year 6. So now we want cash flows to start in year 3 and end after year 6. So in this case, we want to change our if function a little bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to use the and function inside of it. So if I scroll over, I'm going to type and in front of my logical condition, and I'm going to close that up. The way the and function works is it tests if multiple conditions are all true. So it has to be that condition 1 and condition 2 are true. If they're both true, then and returns true. So it's just a more complicated logical test. In this case, we can do and with just one logical test, and it works just fine. But now we can actually add in our second logical test. So within and, I hit comma, and now I still want to test, is the cell C8, in this case, is it now less than or equal to our end year? So our end year is over here in cell D5. Notice that when you're in the formula bar editing it, when you hit F2 to enter it, if you want to reference a cell outside of it, you can't arrow to them anymore because you're arrowing around in the formula. And so you have kind of two options. You can either type it directly, like I did with C8, or you can use the mouse to go ahead and touch it. All right, so here I use the mouse and the keyboard. Both work okay. Here I'm going to use F4 to lock it. And now we have our two conditions. The year has to be both greater than or equal to 3 and less than or equal to 6. We hit enter, copy and paste that down, and now we only see our cash flows in years 3, 4, 5, and 6. All right. That's exactly what we want, so everything is working so far. All right, the last thing I want to show you here is what if we change the and to an or? That's one other function we might like to use. So let's go over here and to and, we're going to delete that and make it an or. So or is very similar to and. It's just going to check if any of the conditions within it are true. So if you have two conditions, if condition 1 or condition 2 is true, then the or statement itself will be true. So in this case, we can change to an or, and we can, before we do, we can think about what we're going to see, right? It has to be either that the cash flow is greater than, or time, year is greater than 3, or less than 6. It turns out that everything is either greater than 3 or less than 6. So when we do this, we should see cash flows for all 10 periods. And that is exactly what we see. So using if with both and or allow you to build these more dynamic models. We can control our cash flows a little bit more and ultimately get to more interesting valuation problems.